Okay, it's time to lift ourselves up with Lifted. So, this one is a very interesting take. It is showing a guy being abducted by aliens, but it is an alien who's currently taking a driving test.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of like a driving test. So essentially, we have a young alien by the name of Stu who is taking an alien abduction test, very similar to how a teenager would take a driving test. So he basically has to snatch a farmer away from his bed and into the mothership without waking him up. Very akin to like Don't Wake Daddy, if anybody remembers that board game from the 90s. Anyway, so basically he's getting everything wrong. He's pushing all the buttons wrong. He's putting him in weird positions. He's getting him stuck into trees. He lets him go when he's just right into the mothership, and then he sets him free. And then the instructor, who's simply known as Mr. B, tries to make sure that he doesn't mess up, and he just like pushing him aside because he's completely failed his exam. And then he decides to give him another chance because he's such a good blob like that. And then he just lets him go with letting him have the controls. And then Stu basically just screws it up, completely crushes the farm. And the only thing that's left is the bed. And then the farmer wakes up. We have the classic Wilhelm scream. And that's the end of the short.
Yeah. So, I like this. I mean, it's very creative. I think the idea of like, it makes you wonder, how do aliens learn how to abduct people? Like, it's like, it is actually an interesting concept of like, and on some of that as well, I'm really surprised that no one in Pixar thought, you know what, the idea of aliens like learning how to basically be like, the aliens that we know from like, Area 51 and like all that, all the UFOs and things like that. Like, the idea of like an alien having to learn his craft and be successful at what he does, that actually sounds like a really good concept for a Pixar movie when you really think about it.
Yeah, it does sound really interesting. It's like, Pixar has this unique way of like showing perspectives of things we would never think about. Like, what would it be like if, we have toys interacting with babies? How would they feel? Or, what would it be like if a snow globe interacts with other displays? How would they feel? All that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's actually really interesting about like an alien's perspective about like, oh, they're just like regular beings just like any of us, and they're just trying to learn how to do things and be able to become functioning members of society. So let's just have them learn how to abduct people because it's relatable to people trying to learn how to drive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love the. I mean, you remember when I first took a look at the console, the alien spaceship, and it was like, how do you learn to drive this thing? Like, it's just yeah. Like that would be the most baffling thing I'd ever have to put in front of me. And like I work with computers, for crying out loud. So I mean, in regard, I love Mr. B in this. Like he has that poker face. He's not letting on like what he should do to Stu. And every time he makes a mistake, he writes something down in his clipboard, and it's not good. And
Nope.
you just see it all piling on, and like the frustration comes on Stu, and then he just ends up like whacking all the switches and just making a complete mess of it. And but then you end up with a situation where he almost kills the farmer, and so he he has to reach over to like stop him from like crashing to the floor. And so,
Yep.
and then he just basically moves Stu aside and just basically does it all himself, puts everything back together, and just shows basically the amount of dedication they actually need. And this is a good lesson, like for a lot of people, like it's not as simple as you may think it may be. You can't just go in with just confidence. You need to actually learn about you can see there when you check out the manual and everything like that, and he's even getting marked down for that. Like he's not even done his homework to even actually conduct this test. So it's just it's a good wholesome lesson, I think, for our younger audience. I think with that
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Yeah, and once again, it was nominated for an Oscar for Best Short Film, but it lost to The Danish Poet.
yeah.
So, yeah, it wouldn't be for a while until Pixar would win an Oscar for an animated short, but we'll get to that later.
Well, they're doing sweeping up all like best animated film at this point, aren't they? So like
Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. Like, a lot of them that have been winning have been either Canadian or European or various other locations. But yeah, Disney wouldn't go into the limelight until Paperman. But once again, we'll go into that later.
So, yeah, I mean, like right now, I guess we could say we're somewhat halfway through our PixMinis. So, yeah,
Yep.
we'll definitely you just keep tuned in, and we'll definitely let you know what the next one's going to be.
All right then. So catch you later.
Catch you later.